Hello, and welcome to part 2 of this blend of videos. In this video, we're going to be going over basic manipulation tools that we can use within the edit mode to help us effectively make a nice looking mesh. Just so we start, a couple of things before we start actually modelling. I like making my scene look a bit nicer, so I keep the default cube. But at the very top, we've got different view modes, so I keep it in the shaded view, viewport shading. But I press the drop down, your cube probably looks like this, where it's quite boring, you've got no nice highlights. So even when your model's finished, you'll look at it and be like, that's not very nice. But if you click on this little drop down, turn on cavity, and set it to both, so it's using world and local, world and screen, sorry. You're going to get these nice highlights. And it's also going to offer you ambient occlusion, so when we start doing things like this, you get some nice little shadows. It's very easy to become demotivated with doing 3D art when it doesn't look nice. But this makes everything look nice, so you'll never be demotivated. So cavity, set it to both. It's pretty much what I change. Your preferences might reset when you close Blender and open it back up. So all we're going to do, once I've done that, chuck your camera where you want it to be. So holding Alt and left clicking. What a beautiful shot of a cube. I'm just going to go to File, Defaults, Save Style File. So now, every time I open Blender, I've got to get the exact same view. So all of this has been saved where I stretched it out, etc. Which is really good when you want to start making your own workspaces. You haven't got to keep redoing it every single time. Alright, so let's make something. This is a software called PureRef. It is free. Highly recommend downloading it. It's basically a infinite reference board. So like I could take these and just keep adding them. Pop, 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 and it will just keep growing. I can just go massive. So the plan is we are going to make a basic pickup. So I thought we'd do some ammo. So just like a shotgun shell. So all I've done, I've gathered some references from different angles. It's a cylinder, so I don't really need that many references. So one from the front I can actually model over. One to show where the striking point is. I don't actually know what the official name for that is, because I don't own guns. And then one to show what the actual top bit is. So where the little cap is. So I see people, I see students all the time. It's a real bugbear of mine. They'll have their references. And I'll be like, trying to size it while looking at that reference here. If you're modeling anything, you want references. Ideally, you want like a minimum of 9. I know I've only got 4. 9 references is like a good number, especially for when you're doing materials. So for example, this bit down here, I'd have loads of different references of this material to get a nice variation. And you can see that things like wear and tear wouldn't really happen on a bullet because you shoot it once. You'll probably have a couple of scratches where it's like slid into the magazine, for example. But you want to try and gather as many references as you can, depending on how complex the object is. So for example, if you're doing like a sniper scope or a gun, weapon, etc., you'd have so many different references because there's so many different complex parts of it. So here's a model that I was doing a while ago that I never finished. I know I did finish it. I never textured it because I've made it to 3D print. But it did have some knobs on the top and the side. But I think for this I had about 30 different references, just looking at different imperfections. But gathering as many references as you can is just a way of getting yourself more information. You won't spend as much time confused because you can just refer back to your reference board to find whatever you're trying to work out. So, I'm gonna model this one. You don't need to have the exact same reference. I literally went onto Google and I looked for shotgun shell. I didn't use Bing, not a fan of Bing. And all I want a reference image that is pretty much flat. So I don't want one that's at a weird angle. I want one that's like directly flat to a certain axis. So when it comes to modeling, it's just really quick. So for example, trying to model over that will be horrible because it's showing more at the bottom than it is the side. So just a side on view. Cool thing about PureRef, you can set the mode to always on top, and I can literally scale this down, hold right click to move it, and I can have it over a bit in Blender that I'm not actually using. Then I can just scroll around and use it as a second little window. Very useful. Right, so one momento. Where is it? There it is. Boom. Shotgun shell. So right click, save image as. Just make sure it saves as a. Loads of random references in my downloads folder. Please excuse me. As either a JPEG or a PNG. Blender's a bit weird about taking other file formats. And literally all I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna get my image. Just gonna make it large icon so you can see. And you need to make sure you're in object mode. So remember at the very top, you can delete your cube. So just click it in object mode, press delete on your keyboard. And all you're gonna do is open your file explorer, click on your image and drag it into Blender. So the really important bit when you're doing this is that you are flat on an axis. So for example, if I'm like this, well, technically I'm in 3D space all the time, but here I can actually see the grid floor and I drag it in. It's going to be very hard for you to model at such a strange angle. So in the top right on the little view cube sphere, there's a cube in every other software. I'm just going to click on X or Y or Z, whatever one you want. Go into my images, click, drag it in. And I'm just going to press W to move it to the center. So now when I rotate my camera, perfectly flat. Beautiful. Easy peas. So, in Blender, loads of different meshes that we can create. Maybe you would have guessed that. A bit hard to make objects out of the cube all the time. So I've dragged in my reference. If that isn't working, so you go add image reference, and then it'll pull this up, and then find wherever your thing is. Boom, and it will also pull it in. Very easy. Right. So what we are going to do to start with, not to talk to you like you can't break apart different shapes. This is obviously a cylinder. So all I want to do, while I'm in object mode, I want to go to add mesh cylinder. And that will give us this beautiful cylinder here. And I'm just going to move my reference to the right slightly, just so it's kind of in the middle. And I'm going to click on my cylinder and press R to resize it. And I'm going to click on this white outline. Very, very important. The white circle. If you're finding it hard to click that, I know many people do, as long as you're in scale mode, you can put your mouse away from the object, click in the middle mouse and then drag to the left, or just drag towards the center point, and it will do a uniform scale. The reason for this is, let's say, okay, there you go, I'm going to match that up nice and tight. Wow, that's a beautiful, disgusting. So you're not doing a uniform scale. By clicking on this white one, it's scaling it on all axis. Or if I click in the middle mouse, it's doing all axis again. So, click my middle mouse in, drag towards the center, and I'm just going to press W just so I can reposition it a bit more. So from here, I am going to click on the blue axis, and I'm just going to get a rough height of this shotgun shell. And we're finished. It looks great. Absolutely beautiful. But we don't have the nice little rounded top. We don't have this little indent where it's slightly different, not by much. Or this copper, I want to say, casing at the bottom. We're going to ignore this little circle bit because that's just not enough time in this video to do everything. So, now what I want to do. My cylinder is beautiful. It is looking how I intended. It is the correct size for the shell. I want to click on my cylinder, and in the top left I want to go to edit mode. And what I want to do, I'm going to start from the top, and I'm just going to work my way down to the bottom. So, as we can see, not in all the references, because this one looks like very cheap shotgun shells. This one's a bit more premium. We've got this slight little lip. I'm looking at the pure F, by the way, just in case you're confused of white knuckle attack. I can just do it here. Just fine. So I got this nice little curve. It's not like this. It's not like this. It is curved. Curved and beautiful. And there's also a slight highlight. So the highlight can be one of two things. So the highlight could be that there is a sticker wrapped around the shell, which means that it's slightly bigger than the actual shell, which means light's catching it. Or it could mean that there's like an imperfection in the mold, I guess it would be called, where it just kind of dips in a tiny bit and then smooths out. So because we're not doing actual texturing, we're going to model in that little divot, just so it's a bit more visually interesting. So I'm in edit mode, and I want to select this top face, this one here. So I press 3 on my keyboard for face selection, and I'll just click on it. And on the left hand side, there's a tool called Bevel. And I'm going to click on Pull. So, just to recap them steps. I press 3 on my keyboard, I click on that top face, I press Bevel, I click on the little yellow thing, and I pull it. Now, for the untrained eye, right now they are untrained, unless you've done Blender before, this bevel is not correct. This bevel, hideous. And I will show you why and what I mean. Here are 2 cubes. One of the cubes, I'm going to stretch it in object mode. The other cube, I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm also going to stretch it. So, 2 cubes, both stretched, near enough the same size, not perfect. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bevel all of the edges. So, if we look at the one that I done in edit mode, to start with, from the top down, we have a beautiful, straight, very uniform. Every edge, same length, just not messed up. If we look at this one, we can see this bit stretched. Stretched. So, the reason for this is, our shotgun shell that we're making, we stretch it in object mode, which means that Blender now sees this object as 1.09 on the X, 1.09 on the Y, and on the Z axis it's 3.59. So Blender needs to know that this is the size that we want, so when we do bevels, they are exactly how we want them, basically. Something that I don't really show you in Blender tutorials anyway. Not that I've seen, but I haven't watched that many. Not as a boast, as I've come from other softwares, and 3D is 3D no matter where you are. So, what I need to do is, I'll duplicate it just so you can see the difference. I go back into object mode, and I click on the one that I'm actually going to be editing, and I go to Object, Apply, Rotation and Scale. So now, if we look at the scale on the right hand side, the scale is now 111. So we've 1'd it out, 0'd it out, but 1'd it out. So now when I go into edit mode again, I press 3 on my keyboard, I select the top face, and I bevel, and I pull it. There you go. We've got a beautiful bevel. Where on this one, just to show, hideous, hideous, no. Sometimes not applying rotation and scale can benefit you. Like if you don't want symmetrical bevels around your entire model, you can use it. But I wouldn't say a rare case, but not very common. So what we have done, we beveled it, now we've got that lovely angle. But this is not like this, this is like this. So all I'm going to do is Control Z until I undo my bevel, and I'm going to do it again. So click on face, click on that top face, click on bevel. If you're a fan of hotkeys, by the way, it's Control B. I use hotkeys, I hardly ever use them buttons. And I'm going to pull it. So what I want to make sure is that my bevel is going to this bit here, where the shape kind of levels out. So Control B, pull it until it gets to that point. And then once I let go, I have this little pop-up. If you click off your model, that pop-up no go there. It'll disappear because it thinks that you've applied it. And here we've got loads of different sections, well, options rather. So the width, how big our bevel's going to be. We've got segments, how round our bevel's going to be. So remember, you are modeling for games right now, unless you're using this for like production films. If it's for films, go nuts. Hopefully you have a very powerful machine. And then we've got shape. So the shape determines whether it's going to suck in or suck out. So 0.5 is fine in this instance because we want that nice curviness. And that's how you do it. That is a nice bevel. So, now, what we're going to do, we're going to add in that little tiny change to get that reflective rim. So we're going to use a new tool. Oh. So on the left hand side there is a tool called Loop Cut. So basically what it's going to do, if I click it, if I hover over vertical lines, it will give me a horizontal cut displayed by this yellow edge that's going through the model. If we go on horizontal lines, don't know why that took me so long, it will give me a vertical cut. So what I want to do, I want to add a cut on a vertical line and I want to pull it, so I'm just clicking and dragging, and I want it really close to that top bit. If you're going more stylized, you can exaggerate. And obviously right now, because we haven't changed the size of it or anything, it looks the same. So all we're going to do, sorry, another quick tip for you. Nothing in Blender is confirmed unless you click off the object or you go into position rotational scale. So for example, if I click and drag and I let go, I'm still in that tool, which can lead you to do loads of little mess ups on your model without realizing. So all I do once I'm done, I just press W on my keyboard to put me into position mode. So all I'm going to do, I want this top bit to be ever so slightly smaller. So I'm going to go into face mode again. So press 3 on my keyboard. I'm going to click on that top face and I'm going to press the up arrow on my keyboard. So what it's going to do is going to grow my selection. So 1, 2, 3, and I just want this one to be blank. And I'm going to press R for scale, hold my middle mouse and just drag it in. Ever so slightly. So right now it's quite hard to see what the highlights are because we can see the individual faces. So if we go into object mode again, so at the very top left, change from edit mode to object mode, or press 4 on your keyboard, or if you're in Blender default, press tab. I'm just going to right click on my model and then press shade auto smooth, and that'll smooth it out. So all I'm looking for is a very slight, probably not even worth it to be fair, unless I exaggerate even more. There we go. So I've jumped back into edit mode and I've exaggerated that angle even more by scaling it in. So now we can see that we've got that nice highlight go around the top. Very nice. Beautiful, some would say. Right. That is near enough the top done. We've just got to do that bit that dips in, which I saw somewhere here. So it dips in. Like I said, it's a different type of shell. So what we can do instead, another new tool. Ooh. So back into edit mode, face mode, I'm going to click on that top face, and this one is called Inset Faces. Basically all it's going to do, it's going to make a face within a face. So I'll click on this face, and I'll do it. It's just making another face within the face that I've selected. Okay, so another new tool. I did realise that I didn't actually show you how to use X-ray mode, so you can see your reference through your model. So if you hold Alt and X, or press Alt and X, it will toggle so you can actually see what you're modelling around. So the next tool we're going to be using is one called Inset Faces. So I click on Face, I click on this very top face, and I press Inset Faces. And if I click my middle mouse in and drag it in, essentially all it's doing is making a face within the face that I've clicked. So if I do it here, it'll make me a rectangle, etc. Yeah, some funky stuff. And then after I've done this, I'm going to use another tool called Extrude Region. So I'm going to click on Extrude Region, same face selected, and I'm just going to drag it down. So it's going to extrude into my mesh. So right now, we got a really nice curve, and then we got a right angle. And we don't really want that right angle, so we want to bevel it. So I'm going to go into edge mode. I'm going to double click again on that ring edge, so the one that's looping around. And I'm going to press bevel. Pull the handle up. And just turn the segments up a tiny bit. There we go. Beautiful. So now that is done, we want to start working on this bottom bit. So the tools that we've used so far, we're literally going to just be using the same tools. The only 3 tools you really need to do 3D, I must admit. So to start with, what we want to do is everywhere that our model changes shape. So if we look here, for example, there's a slight dip in, and we can see it by this kind of shadow. So I want to start adding edges wherever my model is dipping in. So for example, I'll have one here, and I'll have one here, and then one here. So the reason for having 2, if I don't have this one, when I dip this bottom bit in, it's going to go like so. Where if I have 2, it's going to give me like a nice bevel without me actually doing anything. So, let's just make sure I didn't undo anything unnecessarily. Edit mode, I'm going to use the loop cut tool. And I'm just going to click and drag down. So I'm going to do it based on the side of my reference because all of this is kind of sloped and distorted. And I'm going to add another one just beneath it and another one here. And the exact same technique we've done on the top. I'm going to go, so make sure you press W to get out of loop cut. I'm going to click on face mode. I'm going to click on that bottom face and press up on my keyboard. So I want to make sure not to select this bit because this bit here is retaining this straight line. So for example, if I was to select that bit and scale it in, you can see I'm getting a taper, which I don't want. No tapers, apart from the little taper we're about to do. So I click the bottom face, press up on the keyboard, up again, and I'm one line down, and then I'm just going to go into scale mode. So R on the keyboard or press scale, click them with the mouse in, and drag across. And now we can see we've got that nice little divot, so to speak. Right, so we can see this bit here actually comes away from the model. So instead of going in, it's coming out. Here's another new tool. So all I'm going to do in face mode, so make sure you press W, get you out of loop cut mode or whatever mode you're wearing. And I'm just going to double click. You might have an issue sometimes whenever I want to recreate it. There we go. It doesn't normally work. Where it's selecting horizontally instead of, no, it's selecting vertically instead of horizontally. In Blender default controls, there is a control for that, but not in industry. It's very sad. But luckily, X-ray mode, very useful for obvious reasons. If I click and drag instead, I could click one face, hold shift, work my way around, and select multiple. But that's going to take a bit of time. So I can turn on X-ray mode, and I can click and drag over these little black dots. So click and drag, and that is going to select all of the faces that I need pretty much. And I'm also going to hold shift and just click that bottom face. I know because we're a tiny bit short, as you can see on the bottom. Like a little gap. Rub that out. And I'm going to press extrude region again. So the issue that we have when I do extrude region is extruding in one direction. So up here it was fine because we just wanted to go in. But here we want to go out out, 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 down. So the way extruding works, extrude region rather, is doing it based on the biggest face, and because that big one on the bottom is the biggest one, that's the one that's taking the dominance. So basically what we want it to do, we have something called normal directions. So each face, mess up. Oh, each face has its own normal direction. So we can see this one's coming out here, this one's coming out here, and it's basically just the way that the face is looking. So I'm going to click on that bottom face. I'll press the up arrow to grow my selection. Instead of using extrude region, I'm going to click and hold on it and do extrude on normals. And I'm going to go flat to my image, click in my middle mouse, and push it in. I'm going to exaggerate it a tiny bit. And you can see they're all extruding in the correct direction, as opposed to just having one direction. Let me turn that off. So, now, we can see here, there's a little rim light going on, which means that this is a curved surface that we can vaguely see in the pixelated image. So I'm going to go to edge mode, press W to get me out of extrude region. Double click the edge, and I'm going to bevel it. Pull it up, add some segments. Good, looking beautiful. And then that very bottom bit where it kind of lips out, like so. I'm going to use loop cut again, and I'm just going to pull this down using X-ray mode, try and gauge where I want it to be. Quite a nice bit to exaggerate on that. So I've just added an edge where I kind of want it to bulge out. And the same technique again, so I go into face mode, X-ray mode, select these faces, extrude on normals, and push it out. And then I'm just going to bevel these edges again to give me that nice round surface. Like so. Very easy. It will become easy if you have cried while making this. And the last little bit we need to add is this bit here. So, the exact same technique that we've done at the very top. So I go into face mode, press W, get me out of bevel mode. Want to inset a face. And if we look at the reference, it kind of goes in, tapers, goes in again. So I inset, I extrude, I don't need that reference anymore. Go away. There we go. So I extrude in a tiny bit, I extrude again, and this one I'm just going to scale. So I press R, and then I extrude down again to give it that kind of cool looking bottom. And that is it, that is the bullet finished. We just need to set up materials, chuck it in Unreal Engine, make it look nicer, and that's it. So, just to recap. In this video we've looked at various tools within the edit menu that we can use to manipulate our mesh. We've looked at the extrude, bevel, loop cut, as well as looking at inset faces. In the next video we're going to be looking at how we can assign materials to our model to enable us to integrate it into Unreal